So let's go ahead and start. So, hey everyone, thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Hannah Roth. I am a marketing strategist and scientist, and I will be helping moderate the intensive today. So, before Dan begins, I do want to walk through just a few housekeeping items. First, please put yourself on mute if you haven't already so we don't get background noise. There will be multiple people on the call today, as you can see, and we want the sound to be as clear as possible for everyone. Secondly, the session is going to be recorded. If there are any questions you would prefer to ask in private, please email them to dan.smink@refractroi.com, and I will put that email into chat in just a second. Um, so I want to talk about the format for this intensive. So we're going to have sections of fast-paced teaching, followed by time to workshop the lessons that you are learning here today. We sent the workbook out to each of you, but I will also put that link into chat for anyone that didn't get a chance to download it. We want this intensive to be as actionable as possible so you can leave here today and start generating cost-effective leads. So please take advantage of the workshop time. Going along that line, feel free to ask questions as we go. You can add them to chat, you can raise your digital hand, or you can simply interrupt. Dan is going to do his best to answer as many questions as possible, but odds are good that we may not get through everything. So for those questions that we don't get to today, our goal is to reach out via email with answers and follow up. If you can, turn on your video unless you are stuffing your face with breakfast. It's more fun to talk to people than to blank screen. So if you're able, please turn on your camera. And finally, don't be intimidated to ask quote unquote dumb questions. The whole purpose of this intensive is to learn. So if you have a question, odds are good that other people in the room also have a question. Dan is the expert in marketing on purpose, so the rest of us don't have to be, so feel free to ask for questions. So that wraps up our housekeeping portion. And now I want to move into introducing you to Dan Smink. So for those of you meeting Dan for the first time, he is the founder and president of Refract ROI, a dynamic digital marketing agency focused on serving manufacturers. Refract ROI's mission is to help manufacturing companies establish cost-effective lead generation, get found online, and repeatedly hit their revenue targets. And Dan has a history in this. He has helped multiple manufacturing companies realize a 500% increase in their revenue by employing strategic and thoughtful marketing initiatives, some of which he is going to share with you today. So with that, I will stop talking so Dan can get us started. Dan?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. If you have not, actually, could you just let me know, make sure that you have the workbook that we created for today downloaded, first of all, and open, because we actually want to make today a very actionable day, as Hannah said, and so I'd like to be able to work through that. So if you don't have it open, please open it on your desktop so that we can use that to work through what we're doing. Very excited to talk to you today. It's been an opportunity to really share with you guys how we do what we do for our clients and give you sort of a peek behind the curtain, a look at the how we do the things that really drive lead generation for our clients. A little bit of background about me. I've worked in manufacturing or marketing for about 25 years, and I spent about a decade doing medical device manufacturing. I actually worked for a company that developed one of the first coronavirus tests, one of the COVID tests that we took, that many of us took in this past few years, was a product that we developed as a part of our product platform at the diagnostic company that I worked at. I founded Refract. It was my second agency. I founded it in 2011. So we've been around for almost, 13 years. And about a third of our clients are manufacturers. We work with a whole range of companies, but manufacturing is really a special focus for us because, one, that's where I came from. I built the company to be much like a manufacturing firm in the sense that we are very process driven. And then also because manufacturing is an area that you can achieve really tremendous returns on investment for your marketing efforts. And so it's something that you'll get a sense of today, but it's one where I feel like we can really add a lot of value to our clients. And so it's an area of focus for us that we can really make a difference in. So today's agenda, we'll look really quickly at the workbook itself. We'll talk a little bit about why to use digital marketing, and then we'll go into 3 specific sections about what we're going to talk about today. First is finding the right customer. Second is identifying sure things, and by that I mean what are the keywords that are going to drive traffic and conversions. And then the last is how do you increase conversion rates. We have some methodologies that we use that have tripled, quadrupled the conversion rates of landing pages and target pages for our clients. So, what will we have at the end? So the workbook has, gosh, about 10, 12 pages in it, with a lot of different tools. And so you'll actually have really actionable pieces that you can work with. We won't work through all, well, actually, I should say, depending on how quickly we go, we may get to all of it. I don't think we will, so there will be pieces that we'll leave out, but you'll have the idea of how to use them, and you can share them either with your team or do them on your own when you have time after this. But at the end of this, you will have the ideal client profile defined in terms of who you want to talk to. You'll have the foundational keywords that you need to drive your marketing. You'll have an idea of how to structure your website. So you have a site structure map, and then you'll have a messaging platform, which is basically how do you engage and convert with your visitors to your website with your marketing. So, oh, sorry. There's a reason that the Mad Libs is in the bottom right-hand corner. It wasn't there just to be a distraction. The way that we do this, and like back to what I said before about how I actually built the company to be like a manufacturing firm. I actually built all of the things that you're looking at today about 10, 12 years ago when I started the firm. And the reason that I built them the way they are is that they can be very consistent, so that they can be easily taught and trained to other people. So in order to do that, we made it kind of like Mad Libs. For those of you that haven't done Mad Libs, it's basically a bunch of text, and you fill in blanks on it and come up with a new sentence or paragraph. So much of the stuff that we're going to do today is very much like Mad Libs, in that you're going to answer some questions, then you're going to take the answers and you're going to fill in blanks, and you're going to come up with messaging, profiles, things like that. So that's what we'll end up with today, are these items here. So let's take a real quick look at the workbook. I have it open on the left-hand side of my screen. If you can't see it, please let us know. I don't see anybody saying they can't see it. So, all right. So the first is what we call the 90-10 sales funnel, which I will get to in a minute. Second part is identifying your best customers, your ideal client profile, keyword idea generator, a spreadsheet that you can use for your keywords. You can actually take this and adapt it into like a Excel spreadsheet. Website site structure map that you can edit, keywords and mapping them to the website, a company customer questionnaire, and finally the messaging grid that you'll be developing. So that's the workbook, and that's what we're going to work through today. So let's jump in. There's some very specific themes that I will continually hit over and over and over again today. First, the whole point of today is talking about how to generate leads cost effectively. It's one of those things where I've worked with lots of companies, and I've had companies complain to me because they would say, oh, my vendor, isn't doing very well. And I would actually go and do an analysis, and I would actually say the vendor is doing fine. The problem is it's really hard for you, given your cost structure or the sales cycle or anything like that, for them to be able to help you get leads at a point where you can acquire them cost effectively. So one of the things we actually do first with all of our clients is figure out how to, what's it going to cost to get a lead, and can they be done cost effectively from the standpoint of customer acquisition costs. So everything that we're doing today is designed to increasingly make that more efficient and drive down your cost per lead and your cost of customer acquisition. So the keys to that are, first, finding the right customer. Second, identifying those keywords, those sure things that are keywords that are going to actually drive conversions for you. And then the last is, how do we increase the conversion rates of people that actually come to your landing pages so that they convert at a higher level and drive down the cost of customer acquisition. So first, let's talk about why use digital marketing. on some level, I'm assuming that you're here because you buy into this idea, but you may be in an organization that doesn't, okay? The issue at the center of all of this is that digital marketing now allows us to really address the full marketing funnel. Only 10% of your market is buying at any one time, okay? If you go into a room of 100 people and say, how many of you are looking to buy a car in the next 30, 60, 90 days, 5 or 10 people are gonna raise their hand. The other 90 all need transportation at some level, but they're not buying a car. Every market is like this, okay? So what we're gonna talk about today is that 10% that are actively searching. How do you find those people? How do you find the right people in that group that's actively searching? How do you put the right keywords out there to drive search? And then how do you talk to them in a way that converts them? We're actually going to do a few other webinars this year in which we'll talk about the latent demand part of this market. Today, we're talking about the active demand part of the market. So there's a variety of things that you can do with digital marketing in terms of driving awareness, interest, preference, helping people make a decision, and then actually taking action and converting. We're going to focus on the items in the bottom level, below the line. So SEO, paid search, web dev, those are pieces that we're going to focus on today in terms of finding the right customer, finding the short things that are going to get them to search and then convert them. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about marketing and the website, because the website's at the center of what you do. It used to be that your website was really just a tactic, and there were other things that a marketing department would do for their company. They do print advertising, they do direct mail, they do, outdoor. There's a variety of things that they would do, PR, okay? All of these things of traditional marketing weren't very focused. In the last several years, all sorts of different technologies have come online in terms of programmatic advertising, social advertising, email lead nurturing, a lot of different things that have come to bear on how we do marketing. And we can now do all of these different things digitally so that we can track them and we can drive people to the website. If you don't have your website at the center of your marketing plan, you really don't have a marketing plan, I would argue, okay? So let's talk about reasons people say that we shouldn't do digital, right? And these are all things that I've heard from people. One is customers don't buy it that way. I think we all probably know that customers actually do, but we all buy it online, and customers, our customers do. And as you'll see in a minute, like they increasingly, especially for manufacturing firms, buy online and will spend a lot more money than they would have in the past. We are growing fast without a digital presence. And this is true for a lot of companies. I mean, a lot of people have really good networks, they have really good referral bases, and they've been able to grow their companies well to this point. That may be true. That probably won't last forever. You're going to get to a certain point where you get to 5-10 million in revenue, and the referral networks kind of peter out. If you want to continue to grow at scale and you want to continue to grow predictably, having a digital presence online that is very focused on driving consistent, predictable lead gen is going to help you grow and scale effectively. And then the last is we're not ready to commit to building a digital presence. And this is very material. You have to be ready to, I mean, I look at marketing and I think of it as an investment. And I think of it that it should have a return on investment for the investment that you make. Okay. Marketing shouldn't be a small part of the budget. We tell people that it should be in the neighborhood of 3 to 5%. If you really want to grow at anything like 15-20% or higher, you're probably looking at like 7 to 10% of your revenue spent on marketing. That should include headcount. So people should be a part of that, but you need to be really efficient about how you use the headcount, because the more you spend on headcount, the less you can spend on programs. And the programs are where you're going to really drive scale in your marketing. But you have to be ready to commit to that. And if you're not, that's obviously something that you have to think about with your company. But you can't expect growth. You can't expect marketing to drive growth if you aren't willing to commit a sufficient investment to it. Let's talk about why we should use digital marketing. And I'm sure a lot of these are recognizable to you guys. Customers are already buying online. competition's doing it successfully. I'm sure many of you probably are aware of who are the people in your space that do this well. You can go and I'll show you some tools today that you can actually use to go look at your competition if you want. Anyway, I can tell you right now, in any industry we look at, there's always one that's doing it really well, at least, and if not, in many industries, more than that. You can communicate with your prospects throughout the buying cycle. So, as I said before, 10, 15 years ago, people would do advertising, they would do, print, broadcast, direct mail, things like that. And that was not a two-way communication with your customer. Now you can actually start to create a dialogue with your customer. And I would argue that going forward, manufacturers need to think of themselves differently, and they need to think of their company differently in their market. And that is, before you just told people about yourself. You're kind of like a barker, at a carnival, right? Now you need to think of yourself as a teacher or an educator. You have to take a position about what matters in your market, and you have to educate people about it. With the new technologies, people can come to your website. You can create webinars with them. You can send them information that educates them about their decision. But you should take the perspective that you're an educator, not just somebody screaming as loud as you can from the a footstool. So anyway, so you can communicate with your prospects in a way that you didn't used to be able to do that. You can also compete with larger corporations. This, to me, is something that any marketer for a small, medium-sized company should really, frankly, pay attention to. Digital marketing is a lot like Monopoly, in the sense that you get a certain amount of money, and if you spread it around the board of Monopoly, you'll never buy enough properties that you can build houses and hotels on it, for those of us that have played Monopoly. And we all know that the way you win in Monopoly is you build houses and hotels on, Park Place and Broadway, right? And some other ones. We have had clients who literally small companies, like $5 million revenue companies, who have outranked Lowe's, Amazon, and Home Depot for the search terms that mattered to them. And the reason was, just like the Monopoly example, they invested heavily from a digital marketing perspective in the terms that drove conversions for them, and won, and were able to outrank these much larger organizations. So, the disadvantage for those larger organizations is they have to spread their money all over, God's creation. Whereas in our case, our clients just have to focus on specific terms that they want to win. But by doing that, you now can compete with the largest companies in the world. You can laser focus on your ideal customer. So this is kind of the creepy part. If you want to watch a rather somewhat dystopian documentary, I would recommend after this watching a documentary called The Great Hack, which is a documentary about the 2016 presidential election, which talks about how the advertising firms for the for the Republican campaign, they used a company called Cambridge Analytica, which was able to really target very specifically who their target market was. It gives you an idea of how really focused we can be, and really market just the people that we want to talk to, so we can be really efficient about our advertising. You can measure and optimize your campaigns quickly. So one of the beauties of digital marketing is that we can almost in real time see how well a campaign is doing. So in days or weeks or months, you can figure out what's working and what's not working, and you can stop investing in things that aren't, and you can up your investment in things that are working. And then last but not least, and really to me the most important part here, is done right, you can achieve a literally stunning ROI. And I don't say that lightly. What we have done for our clients, where they have, might have invested a few $100,000 or $1 million, and I've helped them sell their companies for $30 million, generating $10 million along the way in revenue, is just, it's changed people's lives, frankly. It's transformed people and their companies. And it was through the means of the tools that we're going to talk about today that enabled that to happen. So the reasons to do digital marketing are pretty compelling. So and I'm not the only one saying this, you've got all sorts of people doing reports, people like McKinsey, which is a leading management consulting firm, talking about how digital is the channel that is most preferred these days from a sales standpoint, and that their customers are buying more and more and more online, and they're buying larger and larger volumes. So their willingness to spend hundreds, if not millions of dollars online in single transactions has increased dramatically. So your people are online, they're looking to buy, and they are looking to spend a lot of money. So for manufacturers, particularly those manufacturing capital equipment, this becomes really compelling from a digital marketing standpoint. So any questions or thoughts at this point?
Yeah, I definitely wasn't expecting folks willing to spend $500,000 in a single e-commerce transaction. So this is really interesting.
All right, well, let's move forward. So the first thing we're going to talk about as we're looking at driving cost-effective leads is finding the right customer. So scroll to your workbook to the section where it says on page 3, where it says identify the best customers. Ideal client profile is basically it's the attributes of the person that you most want to sell to. You develop your buyer personas from this, but at the core of this, you want to have a really good understanding of who your ideal customer is. And so that helps you not only understand them, helps you understand what they're looking for, and helps you understand how to talk to them. If you don't have this, it's very hard to build effective marketing. Otherwise, you're just kind of spraying and praying that the words you're putting on your website or on your brochure work. The challenge of this is sometimes it forces people to focus and niche a little bit more. We had a prospect recently. It was a very interesting product. It actually, it went on your wrist, kind of like a wristwatch or a Whoop or a Fitbit or something like that. And it could tell if the person had been drinking before they were driving. And they were like, they'd raised a bunch of money, and they were telling me all about, oh, we have so many opportunities. We can sell this to fleets, so like truck fleets. We can sell it to rehab centers. We can sell it to families who want to monitor their children. They went on, they had like 4 or 5 different markets. And I was like, wait a second, like you've only got so much money. You need to figure out and focus which one of those you're going to go after first, because you can't go after all 5 of them because they're all different, which really it was hard for them to swallow. But it's true. You really need to understand who is that ideal target so that you can do your marketing effectively. Otherwise, your marketing is really unfocused. So that's what we're going to start with today. So I want you to go to this, and I want you to type in, or I want you to think about, and then type in a list of 4 to 6 of your best clients that you have today. Okay? What is an ideal client? It's somebody that's easy to convert. They're highly profitable. They're easy to keep, so they come back and buy from you again and again and again, and they refer you more business. Okay? So let's take a few minutes and do that.
Okay. And I'm actually going to time this, Dan. I'm going to put 3 minutes so we can give everybody a chance to actually write this down, because again, we want this to be actionable. We want you guys to leave here with something that you can do with this information. So I'm going to set my timer for 3 minutes, and then we're going to go through some of those examples.
Quick question. Can you list those attributes in chat again? I just want to make sure that I'm constantly thinking about those. So you said best client is revenue, but also referral source and a couple of others.
Yep.
Okay. We are at time. So.
All right. So you have a list of clients. Now I want you to look at those clients and think about this. And this is also something that we're going to go through the exercise today. You may want to do this back at your office with a team of people. Don't feel like, doesn't feel like it works today. So a lot of times you get better ideas by sharing this with others. But let's take that list of people, or list of those companies, and talk to who the decision makers are at those companies. All right. And what is their job title or titles? What's their job responsibility? What's the industry or industries that they work in? And make us a list of like the kind of company that they work for. So amount of revenue, location, number of employees, technologies that they use. It could be cultural. There's a variety of different things. It could be demographic, could be psychographic, that is common about those companies. But let's take the next 4 sections and list those out.
Okay, and again, we're going to give you guys about 3 minutes to work through this. So I'm going to set the timer. Okay, we're at time.
All right. So the next part, the last 2, are really key for us because these are where we start to build out the keywords that we're going to use to drive conversions. So the first one is, what are the primary pain points or issues that they solve, that you would solve for them? Okay, and that last part's really important because, like, if their pain point is like they can't get sufficient funding to, expand their factory, but you're not a bank, right? You provide raw materials for their production line. That's not something, that's a problem that they have, but you can't solve it. It has to be a problem that they have that you have a solution for. So think about, what are those pain points or issues that they have that you can solve, and then what is the purchase decision that they need to make. So they need to buy something, like they need to buy a new factory, or they need to purchase raw materials, or they need to buy consulting for their operations. So let's take another 3 minutes and we'll put those in. And then once we're done with that, we'll actually build the ideal client profile on the next page. So.
Perfect. Start at the timer. If you guys have questions on, what's a good primary pain point, or does this count, or would this make a good keyword, feel free to ask, throw them in chat. We're happy to help.
Yeah, I've got a question for you, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
Could you describe like a good pain point that you've run across that was kind of an aha for one of your clients that made you realize, okay, this is where we should be targeting versus where we shouldn't be targeting? I'm a little worried I'm going to get caught in my same sort of stuff around pain points. And so have you seen some really good examples of that?
So I would say that, most of our clients are going to have pretty apparent pain points. We do, and we'll talk about this in another example that when we talk about keywords. But a lot of times, the pain point that that you need to solve, Megan, you're getting attacked there by a tiger or something.
Sorry.
The pain point is often something that leads to the bigger purchase. And so you may look at it from the standpoint that, like, they need to do an audit of something that needs to get done, and that's actually going to, by doing the audit, is going to lead to the purchase of what you provide for them. So that could be, you could have a situation like that that happens. I would think a lot around cost reduction, increasing revenue, increasing profitability. What are the issues that drive those things for your customer?
I have about 30 seconds left. All right, time's up.
Okay, so we have the raw materials for our Mad Libs. Now we're going to put it together. So let's take all these, and what I would want you to do is bring down what you wrote up top and put it in the ideal client profile here. And then what we're going to do is we'll massage it a little bit. If you look on the right, you'll see an example of one that for one of our clients. In this case, it was directors of purchasing who are responsible for budgeting and purchasing of key components for the production line within manufacturing firms of fire-resistant packaging with greater than 50 million in revenue, who need to reduce raw material costs for their current production lines and are considering new technologies with the potential for reduced production waste. So very specific, but you have a clear idea now of who these people are and what their issues are and what the solution is that you're going to provide for them. So start to plug things in, and then we can wordsmith it a bit and smooth it out. And then what I'd like to do is have one or two people share what they've got. And if you struggle, look at the example that we have on the page here.
We'll give you guys about a minute to get all this together.
Can we actually give them a little more than that, just because the wordsmithing part's the hard part?
Okay, sure. Is 3 minutes good?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Plugging it in is easy. It's making it sound right. That's the hard part.
Okay.
Steven, is this changing who your customer is?
Yeah, I think it's funny because you're forcing a discipline. Now I totally get why you said a few minutes ago about laser focused.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great discipline.
All right.
Yeah.
So, has everybody had a chance to get theirs finished? And would anybody like to share what they came up with? I know we were all strangers to each other, but is anyone brave enough to want to share what theirs came out? And all you have to do is read it out.
We don't have to be strangers.
Don't have to be strangers. True.
Well, I guess I'll start. So as I mentioned, this is a great process, but so the struggle is like, what if what we make goes into something else? So we're producing, or what if we're producing a bunch of parts or whatever for a diverse list of customers that they're then inserting or blending into their own manufacturing process, right? So we're making components.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So then what? Like the list of end applications could be endless. And so how do we not then chase our tail in the research and putting together a profile when it is potentially diverse?
So, are you saying that is the question if it feels like the number of the types of customers are too diverse?
Right.
So the question is, what's the commonality of those 4, 5, 6 target customers, right? What makes them common? And so they could be a size of company. It could be the kind of thing that they produce. It could be the nature of their, like if you're talking about raw materials, the nature of their production line. What is it that makes them common to each other? That's the kind of thing that we're trying to draw out here, is what that commonality is. So when you're talking about within what kinds of companies, so they might all just be manufacturing companies, if you're producing something for them, but does that answer the question? Or
It does, but I think what you're emphasizing here is the need to go deeper than just like surfacey type stuff. So yeah, I think you're creating kind of a fact-finding mission that maybe instead of taking things for granted, causes us to peel the layers a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I think that the challenge is that's why we go through the exercise, is finding that common ground so that you can be focused about who you're going to market to. Because otherwise we can't come up with the keywords if we don't have commonality across all of these customers to see, what it is that they need to solve, or what it is the issue that they have that's concerning them. So.
Got it. That's helpful. Thanks, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got one I can share. So just following kind of the format that you've got here of we help owners and founders of $5 to $10 million businesses who are responsible for growing new product lines within the adhesive and solvent industry, who need to quickly pivot and create new options for a wide variety of industries. And they're considering what it takes to have as few inputs as possible to create a wide variety of outputs. In other words, if they can have 1 to 2 inputs as far as materials, chemicals, backing strips, things along those lines, and they can use that to create 10 different product lines for different industries, that streamlines their their inventory, it streamlines their purchase decisions, all those other sorts of things. So that's big thing for that particular industry.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right, well, I think we're still a little shy today, so let's move on. So we now have in our hands an idea of what our ideal client is going to be. So let's talk about how we're going to get them to come and find us online, right? And to do that, we really need to identify what is the search terms that they're going to use. And then we need to build our website so that it actually has those search terms present on it so that we can rank and so that we have target pages that the search engine will return when people search for what we do. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about keywords, and I'm going to use a couple different examples because this gets important when you're thinking about the terms, because you're going to have some that are going to be pretty obvious, but you're going to have others that are really going to open up all kinds of opportunities for you, but you have to find them. So the first example I want to use is called a headache rack. And so we had a client that they built items for tractor trailers. So like storage, and these would be things that would hang off of the tractor trailer. So it might hang off the cab itself, or it might hang off the trailer. And the things could be, they're just basically pieces of metal. So it could be like storage bins, it could be tanks for liquids, it could be racks for things like hoses and stuff like that. And so they had one that was, they called it a cab rack, and it would sit on the back of the cab that pulled the tractor trailer. And we were not getting any traction with the campaign. And so we met with the client and we were talking with their head of sales and their head of marketing and a bunch of other people. And we were talking about this core product and why it wasn't seeing any traction. And somebody referenced it as a headache rack. And we said, what do you mean a headache rack? And they said, well, it causes headaches for the tractor trailer drivers because it bangs off of the back of the cab. And so they don't actually call it a cab rack, even though it's listed as a cab rack in their product portfolio and their product catalog. It was actually, they called it a headache rack. The actual drivers did. So when we changed the campaign and we called it a headache rack, sales took off. So it's really important to think about what is the product and how do people reference it. The other thing to think about is there might be, and this is something that Eric had asked a question about before, there could be something that leads to the sale of what you're trying to sell. Okay, so we had another client that sold big, gigantic fertilizer tanks. So if you think of like a petroleum tank at a refinery, they also make these same kinds of tanks, only they put liquid agricultural fertilizer in them. And they're distributed all across the Midwest and the western part of the United States in these different agricultural depots. Anyway, they sell for $500,000 to $1 million. And people are not usually buying initially just the tank itself. And so we were struggling to actually get the campaign to work. After we met with the client again, we talked to them about what is it that gets people to talk to them to then want to invest in a new fertilizer tank. And they said, well, we actually do audits for people. We find out there are problems with the current tanks, and then that's when they want to go build new ones. So we changed the campaign to focus on the tank audit. And once we did that, we started generating all kinds of leads for our customers to start selling millions and millions of dollars of fertilizer tanks. So the key thing is to figure out what is the term that is tied to the topic that your customer is going to look for to solve the problem or solve the issue that they have for what you do. And so that they can then connect to the content that's going to enable them to buy from you. So the real key here is these keywords are what connect your ICP, your ideal client profile, to your content on your website. So how do we pick that? Well, we're gonna have to brainstorm about it. We're gonna have to do some research. I'm gonna show you some tools that will enable you to do some research. And then we continually kind of wash and repeat this sort of stuff. What we are looking for in this search is what we call buying terms. You're gonna find a whole bunch of different kinds of terms out there. And what we're looking for is not the ones that they look for to do research. Those will be important for us when we start talking about the things that are above the line. But if we're trying to drive leads, we want to find the terms that actually convert into customers. And those are what we call buying terms. They're also listed sometimes as commercial or transactional terms on some of the tools that we use, but that's what we're going to be looking for today. So how do we do that? We take a look at the ICP's problems and we start to turn them into questions. We then brainstorm what are the generic solutions that the ICP is considering. So if the problem that they're trying to solve is, reduce cost of raw materials, and the solution that we provide is a specific kind of raw material, those would be two different types of keywords that we would want to come up with for our list. We look at the capabilities of our product or service. Another way to do this is to look at competitors' websites. So one of the things we can do today, if we want to, is we can actually put up a competitor's website and see if we can actually identify some of the keywords that are on that website. And then, again, we're going to do the research and we're going to look at the information terms versus the buying terms. Okay? So go to page 5 in the workbook. And this is where we're going to start to generate the keywords ideas. So what I want you to do is list the problem or issue that they have on the left-hand side in that first column, and then put your issue or your solution or the product category that you have in the middle, and then put the capabilities of your product or service in the right-hand column. Okay, we only have to do 1 or 2 of these if we want. We don't have to fill up the whole box, but this will be the place where we'll start. So going back to the ICP, right? Think of the key problem or issue. That goes in the left hand in the first column, and then your solution goes in the middle, and then what the capabilities of your solution are go on the right. Okay, so let's take a couple minutes and do that.
Okay, I'm going to set the timer for 3 minutes, Dan, and then if people need more time, we can give them more time.
Okay. So you should have a few ideas on this page. Now, what I want you to do is go down a bit. It says other ideas that describe your product or service. And then the other is, what keywords are your competitors using? So think of some different terms or different words for using what your product or solution is. And then go look at your competition. What I've called up on the browser is a competitor to one of our clients. So our client was a aluminum fencing firm. They do aluminum fencing for homeowners. This is one of their competition. And if we look at the competition, we can actually look across the top, and you're starting to see keywords here, right? They compete for aluminum fencing. And they have other terms like residential fence, commercial fence, industrial fence, aluminum pet fence. Shot by fence height would actually be a keyword potentially. You have pool fencing, you have fence brands, right? Take a minute, go look at your competitor's website and see what comes up on their page. You'll find that you actually have more terms here that you can add to your list.
So Dan, it might be helpful if you talk about where to actually look for the competitive terms. So is it the homepage? Is it like, what they sell?
Yeah, good question. So this is the homepage, and usually the homepage will give you a good start on this. The top navigation will also give you some of the really good keywords. So if it's a well done website, now poorly done websites you will not see keyword. When you do the drop down, you won't really see keywords. But if you look at a few of your competitors, you'll find those that they'll have those keywords on there. And then if you go into the target pages, so the pages that are in the drop downs, so here you find more keywords. So there's residential aluminum fence, residential grade aluminum fence panel styles. Some of the headings will show you some of the other keywords. So
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So we filled out this sheet. Okay. Now I want to show you a couple of other options. So this is how we get started with what we're doing. And then we want to really make this robust. So we want to build out the search terms. And we also want to know a lot more about those terms. So we're actually going to expand it. Now, this is something that takes time, and it's something that we don't have time for today, but I'm going to give you the tool to document it, but then I'm also going to show you where you can go to do this. Okay. And so we use these third-party tools. One is called SEMrush, another is called Ahrefs, another is called Moz. So these are, this is SEMrush here. This is the Ahrefs. This is Moz. You can get a free version, but that doesn't usually give you a full amount of, like, it only gives you like 10 or 15 options if you put in a keyword. What you're going to do is actually enter the keyword into the tool. So like here, I put in aluminum fencing, and it returns a whole bunch of different keywords. Okay. What you're looking for here is it's going to show you the search volume. It's going to show you the intent of the searcher. So is it a buying term or a research term? It's going to show you how difficult it is. It'll show you the cost per click, which becomes really important because we can actually tell from this how much it's going to cost to get a customer and how much it's going to cost to get a lead. So in this example here, if they're, let's just say it's $2, most of these are about $2, okay? If 100 people click on your ad in a paid search campaign, about 4% of them are going to convert into a lead. Sometimes it's a little higher, sometimes it's a little lower, but that's generally the average is around 4%. So if 4% of the people that click on your ad convert into a lead, you just take the cost per click and multiply it by 25, and that actually tells you what your cost per lead is going to be through paid search. So in this case, for this aluminum fencing campaign, if they were going to do that, it would be about 2 times 25 or $50 per lead. And so the question is, what rate do they close those leads at? And that gets you your cost of customer acquisition. So we can actually start to figure out what part of the campaign is going to work or not from the standpoint of cost of customer acquisition. We can actually get a good idea of how well our marketing is going to do based on the data that we start to see here. So my recommendation would be, we've got the starter list of terms. What you then do is take those different terms and put them into the tool. So my recommendation would be to go sign up for one of these tools for a month. It's about $100, $150, and you can get a whole bunch of research out of this.
Hey, Dan, we do have a question in the chat talking about the difference between C keywords and T keywords.
Right. So C is commercial, and T is transactional, I is informational. So C's and T's are basically the buying terms. The I's are the research terms.
Okay.
So
Perfect.
So then in this case, aluminum fence is a buying term. Aluminum fence cost is a research term. Somebody who's looking up research cost is trying to learn more about what it's going to cost to buy something. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if you go back a slide where you actually have this filled out and you can talk about the 2 examples, that might be helpful too in the ICP key problems or issues.
Okay, so here, like you could start with the aluminum fencing one, the one in the middle here, and that would be one that you start with in here. You could also put in like Art Deco aluminum fencing gate. That's going to be a much more narrow term. You might start with like aluminum fencing gate. So this tells you that there's about 376 variations of that term with about 5,000 searches a month. And the average keyword difficulty is only 8%. So this would be something that would be really good to use because you could get the customers cost effectively and it would be pretty easy to rank for them. So does that answer the question? The idea here is that we want to find out what these terms are and we want to focus on the C's and the T's in the listing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's helpful, Dan. So it sounds like we should focus our research around C's and T's and then stay away from I's altogether, or is it okay to have some I's?
No, it's a good question. So C's and T's are the ones that are going to be the buying terms. So when we talk about the funnel we looked at earlier here, the ones that have active demand are the C's and the T's. Those are the people that are buying today. The research terms are the latent demand, and we'll actually use them in other types of parts of our campaigns. But the ones that we want to focus on today are the ones that are actively buying, and those are the commercial terms or the transactional terms that they list here. So, when we look at this, the cost of the transaction, this is actually back to what we had said before about how manufacturing is not a really competitive space. The thing that's interesting here is that the more expensive the cost per click, the more likely it is to be a buying term. So here I've sorted all of the ones in the gates, in this gate example, by cost per click. The more people will pay for it, the more likely it is to be a buying term. The less they pay for it, the less likely it is to be a buying term. In some instances, you'll see markets where the cost per click could be $15, $20, $100. In some cases, like certain types of law firms, it can be hundreds, $400 to get a personal injury attorney, let's say. This is all, but this shows us how manufacturing is a place that that has not a lot of competition and an opportunity to get a great return on investment. So. Okay, so this is something that you'll do outside of here. Let's take a look at beyond this, how we'd want to structure our website. Okay, so the next page in the workbook, you look at your website structures. Okay, so a website is structured in a pretty standard manner. You have the home page at the top, and then you'll have what we call the category pages. And those are what you would tend to see in the top navigation of a website. Okay, so if we go back and look at this example of the fencing company here, right? These are the category pages across the top here. So aluminum fence panels, aluminum pool fence, fence brands, and resources. And then underneath that, you're going to have what appears in the drop down. Those are what we call the subcategory pages. Okay, you want to organize this your website this way because it tells the search engine what you're trying to rank for and what the website's about. That's how you're going to get the right type of return so that you're going to gain leads cost effectively because you're going to rank well for the terms that you want to rank for. If you don't organize it this way, it's much harder for the search engine to understand what your website's about. And so you end up with really poor search results. So learning this structure and enforcing the structure on your website becomes really important. So what we have started to do here is we've started to organize through the work that we've already been doing, how you want to organize the site structure for your website. So in this case, you've got your home page. And then if you go back to the site, there are the keywords that you've been putting together. We can start to organize what keywords go where for your website. So you're going to have the category page, which would be the top nav, subcategory that would be underneath that. And then you would think of blog posts that would go under there. So the category page is going to be the generic topics that your product or solution is going to solve. Okay. So in the case of like the aluminum fence example, that would be the big ideas of like aluminum fence panels, aluminum pool fence, and fence brands. Okay. This is something you'd want to take back to your team at the office. This is an example of how the example on the top is an example of how our clients work. Below that is an example of somebody that doesn't do this very well. So these guys have a top nav that has like custom case design process, lithium support industries. They do hazmat packaging. And then they have a drop down that has transport, battery storage, recall, and recovery solutions. And then underneath that, they have these subcategory pages. So this is an example of how you organize the website with the keywords that you're trying to target. So what I'd like to do is then take what you guys have come up with from a keyword standpoint and see if we can organize them into the pages that would go on your website. So putting your primary issues or problems that you solve in the top nav, and then what are the subcategories of those topics here. Those would be that would be how we'd want to actually organize the website.
Okay, so do you want to take a few minutes to have them work through that?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, I'm going to start my timer for 3 minutes.
Okay.
Guys, this is a good opportunity too to audit your own website. So we've looked at a few competitors' websites at this point. We've mapped out some keywords. We're talking about site structure. So go to your website, see how it can be improved. We have about a minute left. Okay.
All right. So over here, we have an example of how some good examples and some bad examples, but some high level examples. Your category would be something like product manufacturing. The subcategories in the dropdown would be product design, product development, product testing. And then in the interior pages, things that would be like blog posts and supporting pages for those subcategories, you would have topics like how do you develop products cost effectively? What are the best options for product testing and why? Okay. Now, below this are some examples of ones I've actually come across. The one in question was a company that actually made and sold capital equipment for road maintenance. So they made things like road pavers, or they sold, I shouldn't say they made, they sold and serviced street sweepers, road pavers, things like that, backhoes. And so when I went to their site initially, it literally just said equipment. And when you would hit the drop down, it would say new and used. The thing that I find interesting about any sort of website is you should be able to tell what your company does just by looking at the top nav and by the drop downs. Okay. So when we fixed them, it would say road maintenance equipment. It would drop down. It would tell the different types of street sweepers that they would provide and the different types of equipment that they had. If you go back to the example that I had shown before, okay, the company on the top, when you go across the top nav and you hit the drop down button, you can actually see what the company does. You don't look at any pictures, right? You just look at the navigation and you just look at the drop down menu. You get an idea what this company is all about. You look at the company in the bottom, you can't see anything, right? You have no idea. Literally, they could be anything. They could be a consulting firm. They could be a maintenance company that just provides services, all right? The key to this is making it so that you organize your site in a way that visitors understand it and search engines understand it, okay? So it becomes really critical, if we want to do that, to pick the right keywords and then to organize the site in the right way so that people can understand and search engines can understand what you do. That's how we drive leads cost effectively, is by getting those people to come visit for those types of keywords and to organize it in a way that it makes sense to them. Okay.
Hey, Dan, I'm sorry to interrupt. What does it mean by that search engines can understand it? And I apologize if you covered that already and I happen to miss it, but what does that mean?
Sure. So a search engine, if we go back to this example right here, right? How does it know what the page is about? The way it knows is that there's things in it called title tags and headings, and then the content itself.
Okay.
If the keywords are in the title tags, like I've got the mouse over the tab here, and it actually shows the title tag. It appears when you do this, and it says aluminum fence supply, fence company. Those are keywords that they are trying to rank for. When you look at the top nav, it tells you the terms that the keywords that the site's trying to rank for. So when you look at the headings, it will tell you that. If we go into like the interior pages, so let's say we go into this residential fence page, right? We mouse over the top, the tab, it tells us residential aluminum fence panels, right? That's the keyword in the title tag. Residential aluminum fence is the heading. It's the keyword in the heading, okay? That's telling the search engine what the page is about. So when the search engine comes through and it indexes the site, it reads these things to know what you're talking about. If you have a site like this example over here, where it just says services, the engine has no idea what that's about. But a site like this, it knows that this page is about lithium support, and then it's going to know these interior pages are about battery boxes, storage, battery bags, things like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I can see where that would be really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So we've seen how to to start to organize and categorize the different web pages and how to apply the keywords to those pages. So now what we want to do is you're going to, when you go back to your back home or back to your office, if you're not in your office, is take the keywords that we've identified and start to map them to the pages on the website. So we're not going to do this here today, but it is something that we want to do when we go back to the office. So by doing this, you can start to see how your site's going to begin to look like this top example right here. Okay. All right. So we've talked about finding the right person to talk to. Okay. Then we talked about identifying the sure things, the keywords that are going to convert them to traffic and into leads. Right. Then we talked about organizing the website so that we can actually get traffic to come to us, that the search engines understand what we're talking about, and that the people that are visiting us can find what the information is that they're looking for. So now, once we've got the people that we want and they're coming to the site, we have to make them convert. And so the way we make them convert is by the language and the content that we actually use on the page. And the way that we do that is we develop a messaging platform that drives conversions, that engages the visitor and converts them into a customer. Okay. So there's 4 components to a messaging platform. Okay. There's what we call the engagement message. That's where the customer sees that you understand their issues. There's the solution message, which tells them that you understand what it is that they're looking for. What we call the reinforcement message, which is where you're telling the customer what it is that you do and why you're the best choice for what they're looking for. And then the value message, which basically helps the customer feel good about their purchasing decision. So they know they bought from the best provider of what they're looking for, or that you've won many awards for what it is that you do. And so they can be confident that you're the best person, you're the best company for them to buy from. Putting this messaging together and utilizing it in all of our different landing pages, target pages, sales collateral, things like that, we are able to increase lead generation by 3 to 4 times over what industry averages have shown. And so we know that this really works well, but you have to think carefully about how you put it together. So let's walk through, well, first, let's talk about where we use it, right? You can literally apply it everywhere. It goes in your buyer personas, it goes on your home page, it goes on your About Us page, you put it on the landing pages, all of your marketing materials, you put it in your creative briefs, the sales team can use it. You should, if you look at all the different materials like this where you communicate with a customer, you should see the messaging platform present in all of them. It doesn't mean they're all going to say the same thing, but they should talk about things in the same way. And they should reference the same customers, the same issues, the same solutions, the same value points, the same points of differentiation. Okay. The other thing is that the customer should see themselves in the messaging. So we can probably all say we've gone to a website for a product that we want to buy and we just love it. We're like, oh my God, this is for me. The reason is because the messaging on that page is speaking to your needs. Look, it's talking about the problems that you have and the solutions that you're seeking. And it aligns almost perfectly with what you want. That's what your goal is for your messaging. You want your ideal client profile person to come to your website and see themselves on the website, see themselves in the landing page, in the language that's in there, and the images that are on that page. Okay? Somebody that's going to buy a fence when they come to this site, right? They're going to see themselves. They're like, oh, I'm the residential homeowner that's trying to buy an aluminum fence. These guys get me, right? This is an example of messaging that's done well. Okay. You go through the process of putting this together, which we will start today. Okay. That doesn't mean we're done. Okay. You're going to want to take that messaging and you're going to want to test it with the people that work for you as well as with your customers. If they tell you that it sounds like it resonates with them, then you know you're in the right pathway. Right? You know that you've reached the goal that you're trying to reach, which is to have really effective messaging. Okay. So you develop it internally through interviews, and you then go out and test it with people. Okay. So the way you're going to build it is we're going to first complete a customer questionnaire. And we're going to use those answers to finish the messaging grid. And then you can refine that language until it resonates with them. And as I said, test it with your sales team, test it with your marketing team, test it with your customers. Okay? So let's go to the next page in the workbook. That's page 9. All right? And let's start to fill out the the components of the questionnaire. So the first two is the issue that's going to get their attention or the problem of theirs that you can solve. That actually comes from the ICP. If you go back up here, you've already actually answered that question right here. Okay? So take that answer, bring it down here. And let's list the issues of theirs that that's going to get their attention and the problem of theirs that you're going to be able to solve. Over here, we have an example of one that we've used with one of our own clients. So this is with a client that does the storage and transport of hazardous materials. So we've listed the issues that the client had, and we put it in language that would make sense to the client. So here we say, a standard approach to high-value storage or hazmat transportation simply doesn't cut it. Code compliance shouldn't be the final threshold for success, but rather a jumping-off point for product customization. You need durable, specially tailored cases and containers that you can rely on for safe storage and transport of your high-value goods or hazardous materials. Without an agile partner who uses regulatory standards to frame innovative solutions rather than define them, you'll be severely limited in a way that prevent you from in ways that prevent you from getting the job done. The idea here is that the customer should be able to read this and see their problems and the issues that they need to solve. Okay. So let's take a few minutes and we've obviously jotted down the problems or issues. Let's see if we can't write them in a way here about what it is that the customer is looking for in terms of the problems that they need solved.
Perfect. I'll start the timer, and then Dan, we do have a question in chat. Curious about time investment. When you set this up for your client, how much time does it take? We want to get better, but I'm concerned we won't have the time to do it well.
So that is a great question. We're going to do it. We're doing this at a very high level today. When we do this with our clients, so we'll interview them for an hour or so about these questions. We talk through this, right? And then we will actually go back to our office as a team. We'll write the answers in, and then we will start to wordsmith it. And that will probably take another hour or so. So this is a couple hour process that we are reducing, into like a half an hour. So it's not something that is done quickly and easily. It takes a bit of time. You need to invest some time to craft it. That being said, it doesn't take days. So does that help answer the question?
Yes.
So I will say there's another interesting part about this exercise, which is that, so we do this for our clients in what we call an opportunity 360, which is where we actually financially model how much money people can make from digital marketing, audit the different parts of their platforms to see what's working, what's not, figure out the obstacles to them being successful. This is the first thing that we go through once we've done all of that, is the messaging process. And as I said, it's a hour or so interview where we have a pretty long conversation and pretty exhaustive conversation around some of the issues that are facing the company. It becomes a really great part of the process for us to develop strategy and help the client actually understand things about their business that they didn't understand before. That helps them not only improve their marketing strategy, but their sales strategy, often their business strategy in general, because we'll see things that they didn't see before because they're getting to talk to somebody else outside the organization. So, all right. So let's move on. The next part of this is the what we call the solution message. And here, what we're trying to look at is what is it that the client wants to find in a perfect world? What I often say to people, you know, when our clients, when we're in that messaging process, is if you could wave a wand and get exactly what you want in this, separate and apart from any product, right? What is your solution going to look like? Tell me what that looks like. And so there's certain criteria that must be met, okay? That could be cost issues, it could be production issues, it could be efficiency, it could be a variety of different things. It could be the way something feels in somebody's hands, okay? And then what does that solution look like in a perfect world, okay? So we want to, as the marketer, we want to know what the criteria is that they're evaluating it against, all the solutions, right, that they're judging it for. And then we also want to know what that looks or feels like in their hands. So let's make a list of what those criteria are for your ideal client profile. And what does that ICP's ideal solution look like to them, right? Again, when we talked about who to interview for this, there's sales and marketing. This is where customers are really valuable to interview. If you can talk to your customers and ask them these questions, it's amazing the insights you get, okay? Here we have an example of what the solution message was for the client that I was talking about, the hazmat packaging provider. So for them, standard approach, this is for their customer, right? A standard approach to high value storage or hazmat transportation simply doesn't cut it. Code compliance shouldn't be the final threshold for success, but rather a jumping off point for product customization. So they make customized products for their customers, okay? So they recognize that their customers are looking for that. They're not looking for something off the shelf. You need durable, specially tailored cases and containers that you can rely on for safe storage and transport of your high-value goods or hazardous materials. Without an agile partner who uses regulatory standards to frame innovative solutions rather than to define them, you'll be severely limited in ways that prevent you from getting the job done. All right? So you can see in there what it is that the customer is looking for. We talked about the criteria, right? Code compliance is one of the criteria. It has to have high value, it has to be able to store high value items, right? But they can't just do that. They're looking for something that is customized to what they need, and they need a partner that can do it quickly and agilely. So let's take a few minutes and try and assemble this one.
Okay, I'm going to start the timer.
Okay. Okay, let's wrap those up so that we can go on and do the next one.
Okay.
Okay. So we've done the part where the client understands that you know what their issues are. We've also done the part where they understand that you know what they want. Now we need to tell them who we are and why we're better than their other options. And also why our solution aligns with what they're looking for and it solves the problems that they have, okay? So this is, again, there's a very specific order that we're going through in this so that the customer understands we get you, we get what your problem is, we get what you want for a solution, and we solve your problem. And not only do we solve your problem, we solve it better than anybody else, okay? So the questions that we're trying to answer here is what your solution is and why you're different, okay? So what is the customer benefit or solution that you provide to each of your customers' issues that are in the solution message, right? So think back to what we asked here, what are the criteria and what's their solution look like? So what is it that you have that you solve there, and how do you meet those criteria? And then what makes you different or better than other products or solutions that your competition provides, okay? The example that we have down here from our client is, company is, I obviously took out the company name, is in the business of mission critical problem solving innovation. Our products are protection containers. Our team of experienced developers, designers, and manufacturers provide efficient and effective answers to complex questions. We leverage smart and practical thinking to develop transportation and storage solutions that expand well beyond what is needed to just be code compliant or attractive. Our in-house lab service provides extensive testing to ensure you walk away with a durable, rugged, and reliable solution that meets your needs and exceeds your expectations. Okay, So we recognize what they're looking for, and then we show them how what our solution is different because of the way that we design it. Then leverage that thinking to develop very specific types of transportation and storage solutions that goes beyond what they're looking for. And that we provide extensive testing so that they can be confident in what the solution provides. All right? Those are the differentiators that for the solution that we provide that meets their needs, that's different than their competition. Okay? So again, the questions you want to answer are: describe the solution that you provide and why it's the best option for addressing your ICP's needs. And then highlight the different points, the key points of differentiation between your product and your competition. All right, so let's make a list of those, and you can put them in here in the messaging grid. Let's take 3 minutes to do that.
Yeah.
Some other questions that while you're working on this, that it was asked was, is the message grid for the search engine or for the customer? This is really for the customer. So, back to what we're trying to do here at the beginning was generate cost-effective leads. We talked about finding the right customer. That was the ICP, right? And we talked about the keywords that are going to get them to come to your website for a paid campaign or an organic search campaign. And we talked about organizing the website. The organizing of the website is for the searcher as well as for the search engine, right? The messaging here is really for the searcher. The searcher needs to come to the website. They need to see themselves. They need to be confident that you can provide a good solution for them. That's going to make them want to fill out a form or call you on the phone and see about buying your product from you, right? So it's really critical. This is really critical for the person, not for the search engine.
We have about a minute left.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Dan, we have another question in chat. Does the 360 project you mentioned earlier help with the grids?
So the 360 is actually it's where we do when you say the grids.
The messaging.
The messaging grid. So the messaging grid is a part of the 360. Once we do we do a financial model, and then we start to audit the existing platforms. So how good is the existing organic search? How good is the paid search campaign? How good is your content? But once we've got that well understood, then we take the messaging platform that we do here, and we use this to improve all of the work that all of the stuff that's currently in place. So this is really the sort of the first step in fixing things. We have to know we need to fix first, but once we know that, then we use this to kick off the process of fixing things. So.
Awesome. Okay, we are at time for that.
Okay. All right. So we're almost done here. We have one more section to go, and that is the value message. And the in its most simplest form, you see value messages all the time when you go around town, and you'll start to see them more now that we've done this. But like, you go to a store and it'll be like, I live in Denver, but it'll say best pizza in Denver, right? That's claiming that the product, the pizza, is really valuable, and you're not going to make a mistake by buying from them because it's the best pizza in Denver, right? Now the question is, who came up with that, right? Did they just claim it? Did they actually win an award, right? You're no different than a pizza shop in the sense that there's going to be things that are going to make your customers believe that their purchasing decision is valuable. Did you win an industry award? Did you have a study that showed that you outperformed other competitive products? Have you, been a leader for some reason or another that makes people realize that they're not just buying it from anybody, they're buying it from the best provider of that product or service in the market? So that's part of this. The other question is, how is their life going to be better, right? It can be a lot of things. They could be more profitable. They could sleep better at night. They could be more efficient, right? They could be, they could have higher quality. Their customers could like them more because they use your product. there's a variety of different reasons why your client's life is going to be better because they bought your product. And there are going to be reasons why they believe that their decision was a good one because of things that you can tell them about why you're different or why you're special. So let's look at what are those things that are going to make their life better about your product, and what are the metrics or the measures or the awards that you can share with them that are going to make them confident in their purchasing decision. At the end of this, we want them to know why it's better to buy from you and why they should be confident in their purchasing decision. What we are trying to ward off here is what's called buyer's remorse, as I'm sure many of us are aware of, right? We've all had buyer's remorse at some point or another in our lives, right? We're trying to prevent our customers from having buyer's remorse once they purchase from us. So let's answer those two questions. How will your life be better? How will their life be better than before after implementing your product or service? And what metrics can they use to prove the value of your offering if they were asked about it by, say, their the superiors that they have in their organization about why did you buy this product? Okay. Below this is an example that we had again with the hazmat company, right? So now that you're working with us for custom case and container design, you can feel confident that you have a cutting-edge solution that is not only designed by some of the most innovative minds, but also supported by them in the long term. You experience the advantages of top-line solutions that are code compliant while also considering other needs and wants of the users. You'll see a return on your investment for more than just the product because of there's the name of the company. Provides ongoing support and lifetime warranties. You have peace of mind because you know that your hazardous materials and high-value goods are safe and protected. Okay, so these are the reasons. So you can see the reasons why they have peace of mind. They have a return on investment, right? They get the advantages of top-line solutions while also considering the needs and wants of their users. These are the reasons why their life's better. Okay, so let's take a couple minutes, answer those two questions, and then assemble them into the messaging grid on the on page 10 of the workbook.
Perfect. Starting the timer now.
All right.
Dan, we have a question in chat. Are general statements or metrics and awards more powerful?
I think metrics and awards are very powerful, but they depend. Like in our industry, for example, I can spend $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 and get a meaningless award, right? So whereas if I had, something that was recognized by the industry as being valuable, that would make a lot more impact. Okay, so it, like many things, it depends. But I also think it's important to share with the customer what it is that you're going to get out of this and why your life's going to be better. So like in this example here about, you have peace of mind and return on investment are your things that are going to matter to you. Now, these are questions that, like, when you do this process, you want to make sure you ask the customer what's going to matter to them, right? Like if you won, the award for, Inc. 5000, fastest growing companies. And that's what really matters to, because like some companies, like we only want to work with companies that are really fast growing. Oh, well, okay, if you won that award, then you would fit what they're looking for, right? You want to ask the customer what they're looking for, and if there are specific awards, obviously that makes it something that you want to target getting, so that you can be better for your ideal client profile. So asking the question and then finding the right awards for that is really important. But then also finding out what it is that they're expecting to get out of this to make their life feel better. You obviously want to not just say that, you want to do it, and you want to be able to prove it. Okay. And so that's very meaningful to somebody. If you're doing the thing that makes their life easier that they're looking for, yeah, they're going to obviously feel that's going to be more important than a meaningless award to me. So does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So now we've got the engagement message, the the solution message, the reinforcement message, and the value message. And you've put these together in a grid that you can then apply to whatever it is that you're going to produce, whether it's your home page, your About Us page, different pages on your website, sales collateral, sales presentations. You can give it to your PR firm if they're working on something. But this is a messaging platform that will guide all the things that you do, right? It's something that ideally the company starts to see everywhere, and they begin to understand, and they talk about things. So down the road, hopefully you're going to start to see your sales team and your marketing team, your R&D team, they're all talking about things in the same way. And that comes from building a good messaging platform at the ground floor. So we have about 10 more minutes that I had left. We're pretty much done, so we can wrap things up. I'm happy to stick around for more questions. It was a real joy today to get to spend some time with you. I know that this was not necessarily easy, especially if it was something that you hadn't done any prior work around some of this stuff. These were really new ideas that you had to come to grips with. There are also some things that you're going to have work, going back and talking with your teams or on your own back in your office. If you have questions about this afterwards, certainly reach out to me. I'm happy to answer questions about how to make this stuff work for you. And then I'm happy to answer questions now if you have any questions about some of the things we've talked about today.
So Dan, we do have another question in chat. Is there a role for using video to deliver the content or the messaging grid, or does this need to be text?
Oh, no, this would be fine in video. You could you want to talk to these points, but you could have a video on your website talking about the things that customers value in your product. And you could be using the value message in that as an example. As I said in the slide back here, you literally will use this everywhere. You should see it everywhere in your marketing and sales materials. If you don't, whoever's creating that piece of material isn't paying attention, or they haven't been told about this material, the messaging platform. But if they have this messaging platform, you should start to see it everywhere. And that becomes really important from a customer standpoint, because we're talking about cost-effective lead generation, right? We're getting the right person coming to you for the right terms that they're searching for, and we're trying to get them to convert at higher and higher rates. If they start seeing a message that matters to them and they see it repeatedly, they're going to get a sense this is what their brand is about, and they're more confident and they're going to buy from you. So this really is at the, this along with those other two pieces ahead of it are really at the base of any sort of really strong marketing platform that you're going to build, whether it's digital or non-digital. You need these pieces in place to make it work.
Next question, what is the financial model you mentioned earlier with 360?
Oh, so with digital marketing, and we can use the example of like aluminum fencing, right? So we can actually see how much search volume there is. So if this was a campaign, we wanted to run a campaign around aluminum fencing gates. There's 5,000 searches a month on Google for this topic, all right? We're going to convert roughly 1% of those, 0.5% to 1% of those into a lead, okay? So that would be about 25 to 50 leads a month, okay? That's just sort of the average. We can figure that out, okay? Just from the averages that exist in terms of what percentage of those searches are gonna get, if we place an ad on all of them, how many of them are gonna get clicked on? How many of those clicks are gonna turn into a lead, right? We can figure that out, how many leads we would get. If we know our close rate, let's say it's 10%, right? And we're gonna get 50 leads, we're gonna close 5 customers a month from a campaign like this, right? And we know that if we know the average revenue per customer, let's say the average revenue per customer is $10,000, right? And we know that that customer is going to buy again 5 times, so their total value is about $50,000 in revenue. Let's just say that, and we'll take the first case of the revenue. we know that in a given year, if we run this campaign, we're going to generate, we said, about 10 customers a month at $10,000. That's $100,000 at 12 months. That's 1.2 million in revenue. So if that would be, if, you know, so my point of this is that we can act, if we know the data of the search volume, we can figure out how much revenue we can generate if we know what the leads are going to perform like in our hands. We also can figure out what it's going to cost to acquire the customer. If we know that the cost per click is $3, let's say this first one is $3.35, all right? 25%, you multiply that by 25, you're going to get your cost per lead, all right? So your cost per lead for these guys would be about $75. And then if we know it's going to cost us, or we're going to close about 10% of those, we know that the cost of customer acquisition is going to be about $750 because you multiply 75 times 10. So if we know the revenue and we know the profitability from the first calculation that I just talked about, and we know what the cost of customer acquisition is going to be, we can see how much revenue we're going to make, we can see how much profit we're going to make, and we can see what the return on investment is going to look like. So that's what the model is that I was talking about on the Opportunity 360. The beauty of it, and we work with a number of private equity firms, they really like us because we can help them see 3-4 years out, what is their investment going to get in terms of how much is it going to cost to invest in marketing, and what sort of return are they going to get for that from a revenue and gross profit standpoint.
So in chat, we have, you can actually predict leads and revenue as part of the modeling. Is there a margin of error? That's awesome.
We try and be conservative when we do it. So we try and make it so that we're going to outperform the model. So I always, you know, like for example, when the client tells us what their close rate is, I always cut it in half. When we use the tools for predicting, like what's the conversion rate going to be, the click to lead rate, or the conversion rate of a lead into a sale, we always downgrade that calculation so that so we end up ideally outperforming the model. That being said, you know, the model is not going to be accurate until we've actually experienced it in the real world, and we take the inputs from the real world and we actually update the model to see what it actually performs like, so that it gets more accurate over time.
So initially, the margin of error is baked in.
Yeah, I mean, what I always tell people is the first model that we do is wrong. Because everything in it is an assumption. You know, the only things that aren't assumptions really are the search volumes and the cost per click that we calculate, that we get from Google. Everything else is based on industry averages, based on history with the client. You know, what's the close rate going to look like? What's the conversion rates what are those going to look like? What's the gross profit going to be? What's your historical gross profit margin going to be like? Okay, historically, how often does your client repurchase? We use those kinds of data points to build the model, but then over time we know what it's like in our hands, and we can see how it performs. But we try and be conservative in it so that we are looking at a worst case scenario. We first build the model.
So Dan, I know your intention wasn't to like try and sell us something during the session that you're here to teach, but if we wanted to chat with you more about the 360 thing that I was asking about in chat, do we just drop you a note and so we can schedule some time, and then how long does that process take?
So one, we'll follow up with this with the slide deck and an email. And then if you are interested in talking with us further about that, just reach out to me. I'd be happy to have an initial conversation with you and strategy session about, you know, what is it that would, you know, that you're what's the problem that you're trying to solve for your business? Is there, you know, how would we solve that? If we're not a fit, there'll be other people that I can introduce you to, but if we are a fit, then it takes us a few weeks to sort of get together about like what would a good interaction look like. And then we can determine, you know, how we would start that. The Opportunity 360 that you're asking about is a 2-month process where we, the first month we basically spend doing an analysis and developing of a strategy. And the second month is a setup of all of the campaigns that you're going to need to run, whether it's paid, organic, content marketing, social media, whatever that might be, so that you're ready to kick everything off. And then we just decide if we're going to work together or not in the long run, and we do that together. So, all right. As I said, if there aren't any other questions, we'll wrap up, and hopefully look forward to hearing from some of you again soon in the future. But thanks for your time today. I hope you got something out of this, and have a great day.
Thank you, guys.